Hey everyone, welcome back to another exciting episode of The Zurvivalist. We're a little over halfway through our third season on the show, and I've got Todd from Portland. Todd, how are you?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for calling.
Awesome. I'm so glad to have you on the show. We just met today, and you are way adept in the zombie genre of writing. Like, tell us a bit about what it is that you do.
Well, I've got a couple of series out, the Zomblog trilogy and the Dead series, which is ending its first quarter. The first 3 books out of 12. The third book comes out in December. Other than that, I am involved in editing and publishing zombie anthologies, and now we're branching into steampunk in 2012.
Awesome. So you are very knowledgeable of the zombie genre, and you probably would outlast a lot of people. At least I'm hoping, with how much work you've done.
I've been following for quite a while.
Yeah, no, you've definitely been engulfed in the culture. So how would you survive it? Like, zombies come Portland right now. They're coming towards you. How would you survive them?
Well, the first thing I want to do is get out of the city. Major populated areas, hanging around is probably the worst possible idea, and that's one of the great things about living out here is it's not too far away to the middle of nowhere from just about any place. Grab a couple of baseball bats, aluminum preferably, since they won't break. For the longest time I thought swords would be a good idea, but first of all, I wouldn't know how to begin to sharpen one effectively. And second of all, once that blade breaks, you're hosed. Swords are always a common go-to. If you heard our last episode, the guy we talked to was really in love with katanas, and episode 4, which is I think my favorite episode, you got to listen to that conversation and you'll laugh, because she was serious when she says that she'll cut you in two with a katana. I think bats are a solid choice. Aluminum, not, wood, I think you get more of an impact, but the aluminum wouldn't break. And you're right about guns, but don't you think having like 1 or 2 guns just for like those emergency situations would be good? I think you always have to have one as a last ditch effort. You're going to have to run after you use it, but I would definitely, I wouldn't completely ignore having them. When all else fails, it's going to come in handy. I think probably with all the pawn shops and of course places like Walmart and everything carrying all sorts of weapons, I think that you can stock up on just a wide variety. There's really no shortage of weaponry lying around. It's just a matter of being able to transport it once you get it, and then being able to maintain it. I think what a lot of people forget is, like, for instance, me, I know absolutely nothing about keeping a bow or taking care of one or making sure that the strings don't go bad or whatever the case may be. So I'm sort of a bludgeon kind of guy. I think that there's no maintenance involved, and you've got it in your hand. You go, you deal with it, and you keep moving.
Now, well, my question is, okay, so you're, pretty much, you're in like Eastern Portland, and you were saying there's, I think the rule of thumb for the Northwest is you can go 90 miles in any direction and be in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
Would you head, eastern towards Mount Hood? Would you head north into Washington, or would you head, west towards the coast? Or south into the dunes by, the Bend area?
Actually, I like Eastern Oregon, and the reason I do is because you've got a lot of open, a lot of flat space, so you can see things coming from further away. And I don't like surprises. When I've been out to Eastern Oregon, there was actually a few houses that I've seen as I've driven up the 84 corridor that just sit up on a hill all by themselves, and everything around them is flat. You can see for miles in these places. Being in the woods, every step you take is like going around a corner. I want to be where I can see.
Now, would you be more afraid of the undead coming for you, or perhaps, like bandits, marauders, raiders, people that are just trying to, take what they can take because they can take it?
Well, I would be setting up for both. I'm actually probably more worried about what people would do once all of society collapsed than I am about the undead, because as long as they're not the sprinters like we've seen in some of the newer films, I can always continue to outlast them as far as distance wise. They're not gonna run and catch me. But people, that's the variable that I'm actually far more worried about. Once there are no rules, I just don't have a lot of faith that people are going to play nice anymore.
True, I agree with you there completely. Especially living in Los Angeles, that would be nuts. But speaking of people, would you like take anyone with you? Family. Like, what's your family situation like, and how would you adapt for them?
Well, I actually, I'm married. I've got teenagers. The hope is that we would all be together, so we could move as a unit. I would actually probably look for other groups that had people that were trying to keep their families together. I wouldn't slow us down for them, but I would just feel safer in building a group based on family units versus based on singles and like packs of people on motorcycles, like the Savini-led biker gang in the original Dawn.
I'd be afraid of them too.
What's that?
Oh, I'd be afraid of Savini on a motorcycle even now. But no, I agree with you. The family unit, because at that point it kind of shows, they're willing to work together. They're already very well adept at working together, and that kind of, and you have an easier time building a community together.
The hardest thing though is that I would have to avoid people that had really small children, because as sad as it sounds, that's a liability. They're going to have there's no concept of you have to be quiet now. They're not going to have any concept of tired doesn't matter, you have to keep running. And people are going to have to start carrying small children. Sad as it seems, you're going to have to get to a place and then start over from there. Little ones are just, I don't think they're going to fare well.
No, probably not. And then you're going to get the parents that are like, oh no, my child, they're down, and they stay, and then they get killed, and then everyone dies. And they could have just easily thrown the child to the wolves.
There's always the one person that can't deal with the fact that was a family member. You're always reading it, and it happens in every story, and that's not me, I can tell you that. But the other thing is I'm not going to wait around and let somebody else take me with them.
True. I mean, and you said you have teenagers, so you're definitely like, they can handle their own.
Exactly.
And living in the Northwest, I'm sure, like, when it comes to, foraging for food, being in the Northwest, I mean, when I grew up in Portland, like we were talking about it before, that I've mentioned on the show, like, I went fishing all the time. I went out to, like, the beach and, and crabbing and everything. So, like, I think us Oregonians have a pretty solid grasp on living off of what the land can give us.
Yeah, and, that's one of the advantages, I think, of living someplace like here versus being a straight city person. I tell you, the people that live out in the farming communities and stuff, I think they're going to be the ones that do the best. You're going to roll into some of these small towns like here in Oregon, places like Pendleton or Hermiston, and you've got a bunch of truck driving farmers out there, and everybody's probably got more guns than family members. So I think those places are going to just become walled fortress towns.
Now, so speaking of like the fortress towns and whatever, because that would be an eventuality, little communities would pop up, they would expand if the government was not able to reestablish order. Would you go to one of these like communities, or would you try to like stay back and just, not want to deal with any of like the political crap that's going to go along with it?
Yeah, I have absolutely no desire to deal with the power struggles that are going to happen. I think the best thing to do is probably wait out the first year and then sort of start looking around for someplace that seems stable. Because, again, without absolute, authority over people anymore, I think that some of those places are going to turn into dictatorships, and I don't want to deal with all the, this town and some sort of feudal uprising against one another. Let them all sort each other out, and then go to the one that seems to be the most level and has the most going for it, has some sort of irrigation water system in place. There's a lot of wind farms heading, up and down the gorge now. People tap into that, it won't be too bad.
Okay. See, I didn't know about the wind. Yeah, because electricity is going to be a must. Hydroelectric dams are big in Oregon as well because the Northwest in general due to the rainfall in the rivers up there, and wind farms, of course. So it's a solid idea of just kind of hanging back and letting the dust settle, and then going from there. Do you ever plan on, I don't really ask this question very often, but I always find it interesting. If you were going back into like Portland and it was a movement to retake the city, would you volunteer, or would you be like, F that noise, I'm not going to put my life on the line?
Absolutely not. I'd wish them luck, and I just figured I'd probably be the last time I'd see them. But yeah, going into a major metropolitan area after all that, I think first responders are going to be the first one to go, and that's why the entire upper structure of our, sort of society is going to collapse, because that's where it's going to fall apart first. It's going to be the police, it's going to be the fire department, it's going to be the National Guard, it's going to be all the medical personnel. They're all gone. So find some smart people, find some good professors at some local colleges. Check out that show, The Colony, when it would run. These are the people that can think of ways to make things work. Find a few of them and go someplace far away and wait it out.
Sounds like a pretty solid plan. So since you haven't officially listened to any of the shows yet, the last question I always ask everyone on the show is, what would you do if you were bit? Go
someplace sort of in the middle of nowhere and eat a bullet. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I got no desire for, friends, family, or loved ones later on to have to try and make that decision for me. I'd rather make it myself.
I understand that.
The easiest way.
Well, that is all the time we have for this show. Todd, thank you very much. You've been very informative.
It's been a pleasure.
Awesome. For everyone listening at home, you can tune in to more episodes at Zurvivalist.com. We are on Twitter at KZOM Radio, Facebook at KZOM Radio. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. We are all over the web. Zurvivalist, just type it into Google. It will pop up. See you guys next week on the show, and have a good one.